Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Colin. I've got 10 minutes or so, and I've got 17 slides, so you know how this is going to go. Luckily, I'm caffeinated. Hopefully, you all are too. This is a huge topic, so I tried this about 5 different ways, and I've ended up with something that is hopefully quite interesting and generic in terms of putting big tech in context with TV, but there's so many ways to go into this topic, it's hard to know where to start. So let me just start with what you guys should already know. This is what the world looks like right now. So Netflix is the biggest subscription service in the world. Is everyone surprised? No, probably not. OTT is about a third of subscribers, and 5 out of the top 10, this shows the top 12 subscription platforms for video in the world, but 5 out of the top 10 or 5 out of the top 8 are online only. So you've got Netflix, Tencent, Amazon, Baidu, and Youku Tudu. So those are all big OTT platforms. OTT is already here, so I'm not going to discuss whether or not it's going to be here. On the other side of things, on the advertising side, Google and Facebook are obviously 2 of the biggest advertising companies in the world. They're also the 2 biggest single brands for video advertising. So again, this has already happened. I'm not going to talk about how we got here. What I am going to try and talk about is what the underlying dynamics are, kind of the bigger technology trends and the bigger structural trends that have led to these companies making this kind of decision, and what might happen over the next couple of years, given that there's several other companies that we haven't shown on these graphics yet. So, big picture stuff to start with. This is important because it puts us all on the same page. The important technical changes that have happened in the last few years are the internet, we're all aware of that, automation, and trust. So, big topical things that are important to allow the last 2 slides to have happened. We have to have trust in internet billing that's global. We have to have payment processes for that. We have to have technologies that allow for the aggregation and delivery of content that doesn't require owned networks within a country, so the internet, and don't require lots of people to do the scheduling and programming because that doesn't scale very well. So these technologies in general over the last 10 or 20 years have enabled companies like Netflix, like Amazon to come into the market, like Facebook, YouTube, to develop platforms where previously there weren't similar kind of things. Come on, guys, come on. You've only missed 3 slides, don't worry. So what are these companies just as a general, again, putting us all on the same page? There's more than just the Facebook, Google, and Amazon group. There's also a few big Chinese companies. We've got Alibaba over there. We've got Baidu and Tencent. These are all huge companies, and what's important from this is none of them are content companies. None of them are fundamentally content companies, and this was mentioned in the previous session in the other room downstairs. The core business of these companies comes from somewhere that's not content. Many of them are advertising. So they're just trying to gain consumer eyeballs on the internet, doing things like social media. Some of them are retailers like Alibaba and Amazon. This is important because that defines their core strategy, and that defines why they're doing video and what they're going to do with it, potentially. Nice little graphic there. This took me far too long to build, to be honest. All of the different things that these companies are doing. So there's a more detailed one for people who want to take pictures. All of these companies have diversified rapidly over the last 10 years away from whatever that core proposition is. So they've gone from retail to covering everything. And this is a small sample of all of the brands and things that these companies are doing. Netflix is not on this because Netflix doesn't do lots of things. Netflix is pure play. So before anyone says, where's Netflix? That's the reason. We'll get to it later. All these companies are very diversified, and they all have a core business which is not video, and it's not content even. And that determines their strategy, and that determines why they've done video and where they're going with it. They are also all huge. So just putting in scale how big these companies are, this is in billions of people reached, or devices reached, or subscribers, or users, or monthly active users, or various other relatively comparable metrics. This is difficult to do in a uniform manner because everyone has a different way of judging whether or not they have a user or a device or a person or a subscriber. But these are all big companies, and to put that in scale with global pay TV, which just tipped over 1 billion global subscribers this past year, that's small compared to Facebook, Google, or Apple active devices. It's small compared to WeChat, and inside this you've got big companies like China Telecom or AT&T with 80, 40 million users. We've got Netflix down here, which, as I said, it would come up 100 million users, but this just doesn't scale compared to what's happening over here, and that is because these are global internet brands. They have trust for billing and payments, and they have automation in order to scale out what looks like multiple different services to different people, but is in fact very centralized. So when you crunch all this together, this is kind of the big jump because I don't have enough time to do the 45 minutes of slides this deserves. When you crunch all this together, what you actually see is a couple of very distinct business models that emerge. And I've tried to put this in context with the traditional industry, so pay TV, and the traditional content producers. What is interesting here is that if you scale the amount of money that you're making from a person versus the number of people that you have in your reach and your coverage, there are two very distinct business models. If you're making between $200 and $1,000 per person, equivalently, you're a different type of company than if you make $10, $20, $50 per year per person. These companies over here scale very differently. They have billions of users. They have a huge reach. So a Fox or a Discovery or Disney, a YouTube, a Facebook, and I'm putting Netflix in there because Netflix is kind of bridging this gap in many respects. These are content and advertising companies. They have a different type of focus, and they're all trying to get huge reach and then take a relatively small incremental piece of money from each of those people or each of those devices. On the other side of the equation, we have companies that are bound by technology or bundling. And I'm putting Apple and Amazon in there because functionally, financially, they look more like an AT&T or like a general pay TV platform than they do like a YouTube or a Facebook. They're taking very significant sums of money from people, but Amazon's reach is defined by its device ecosystem, and Amazon's reach is defined by whether or not you're an Amazon shopper, and more recently, whether or not you're on Amazon Prime. So these are two different strategies. The scary thing is if you can find a way of doing the $1,000 a year with 1 billion or 2 billion users, but nobody's managed to do that yet. And so the decision is likely to split the room between, are you going to stay in a relatively closed network and try and make a lot of money per person in that ecosystem, or are you going to go global, have the widest reach possible, but be relatively happy with a small amount of revenue per person? The allure of going that second direction, breaking the bundle, going global, has led to lots of companies making a strategic decision to just get outside of the traditional infrastructure constrained ecosystem. Let's not go with pay TV operators where they have a network and homes passed and a certain amount of reach. Let's go out on our own and go global. Lots of companies have done that, breaking the bundle. It's been discussed many times, and I'm not going to go into it in any more detail, to be honest. Again, 1 minute, 2 minutes left. So that has had a counter effect, which is that a bunch of companies have then come along and said, okay, we're going to reinstate the bundling, but we're going to do it outside of the network. So you've got different levels in this where you either constrain yourself by your network, constrain yourself by bundling, or try to go global with your content and disregard all those partnerships and agreements that exist in the past. However, as everybody also knows, this has had already the complete counter effect, which is Netflix, the archetypal unbundled company, has become bundled. So there is always going to be this case, going back to that slide with those two cross graphics, there is always going to be a case between bundling on a technology platform, where you deal with the platform and the consumer and the billing, and you make sure that you have the network access, and going global. And there's always going to be a need for both of those things to happen. Even if you don't want to, even if you would like to be one of these guys and just go global, you still need somebody to lay the fiber and actually traffic the data. So it's all part of the same supply chain. Wrapping up, oh my God, I'm going to be on time. Wrapping up on this, what does it mean for all these companies? And this is pretty close to the ending. Everyone knows all these companies are investing in content. And they're not investing small money. Netflix is putting $8 billion on content put against other companies in the content industry. We've got 11, 12 billion being spent each year by Disney, NBC, and Fox, the three largest in the world. On the pay TV side, we've got AT&T and Sky, mostly buying lots of sports rights, spending $7, $8 billion per year. And we've got Netflix and Amazon creating huge volumes of original content. What I'd like to do to tie this all together is talk about the motivations. Netflix is a content company and is coming into this in a relatively pure sense and is doing similar things to Disney, Fox, NBC in creating a content offering and trying to get it to as many people as possible so that it has that wide reach and a relatively small amount of money per person. Amazon, arguably, is not just doing that. Amazon is a retail business, and most people who end up signing up for Amazon Prime Video actually sign up for Amazon Prime. Most people who sign up for Amazon Prime spend 3 times more than normal people on shopping. So this is not a video strategy, this is a shopping strategy. So the core business proposition for an Amazon is still not video. And while coming into the market and spending $5 billion is interesting and great, this is incidental for Amazon in many respects. In terms of its core business, this is not a huge amount of, this is not the main thing that they're doing. Let's put the other 3 big companies on this board as well, and similar things are happening. $1 billion here, $1 billion there. What is the Apple strategy in this? Presumably, a big part of it is to make sure that you stay in the ecosystem and buy the next iPhone. Arguably, the Facebook strategy is to make sure you stay on the site and watch more ads. So there's a lot of things that are going on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all of these companies have the same motivations. And this is probably how I should end all of my presentations as an analyst. We don't know how things are necessarily going to turn out. We tell stories about why they might go in a particular direction. There are things that I have completely glossed over just due to time. So VOD is important, and it has changed video consumption. It has yet to break all of the consumption behaviors, but there is something happening there, but it's not changed the world yet. The technology that has allowed for unbundling, though, and the rebundling decisions that come afterwards, those are quite fundamental technical changes and quite fundamental economic and business case changes. So those are important, and they don't go away just because we've invented the internet. And finally, and this is, I suppose, the main point that I'm trying to make, big tech companies are in this for varied and different reasons. They're not all coming in this in order to compete with pay TV. They're not even coming in this in order to compete with Disney or Fox. They're coming into this because they have a core business, and it might be very different from any media company that we're talking to, but they're big enough that they can completely change the industry just by getting involved. And with that, I've got 1 minute and 42 seconds for questions. So thank you, guys.
Tom, that was an incredibly dense 10 minutes, high value.
I am often called incredibly dense.
Do we have one question for Tom? No?
Excellent.
One here.
Bundling, you said it was Netflix were getting kind of dragged into a bundling proposition. Do you think it's in their interest to embrace a bundling strategy, or would it be better for them to try and sit outside of it?
Are you from Netflix?
Well.
It's about the core strategy that the companies have. I would say Netflix created the technology in order to gain the reach and the audience in order to build the business case. Much like the BBC in the 50s invested in masts and towers and owned terrestrial infrastructure. So they built the technology, and now they've shifted the entire business, or shifting the entire business towards content production. I was in the other session, somebody said they're the first new studio, 21st century studio, although 21st century Fox might argue with that. So if they're a studio, if they're a content creator, their interest is to have the widest reach possible. So going into a bundled strategy with lots of pay TV operators, or anyone who can get your reach up, makes sense. What they might have to compromise on is the price that they try to set for that content bundle, because nobody else is able to extract $10 a month per sub. So even the big players will struggle with that.
So Tom, please stick around. I know other people have questions they may be a little shy to ask. I certainly do.
Here and wherever there's coffee.
I want to catch you. I want to catch you at the coffee break. But thank you so much for a great presentation.
Thank you, everyone.